Today in the studio via Zoom, or is it via? Who knows? I've got Matt Rolfe. What's cracking, Matt?
What's going on, Brad? Good to be here, brother.
Glad you could be zoomed in. Matt Rolfe, folks, for those of you that don't know who he is, he's like a big shot in the hospitality world. Basically was told at a young age that he wasn't going to amount to squat, ends up finding the restaurant business, became somewhat of a whiz kid, ended up working for Bacardi, Anheuser-Busch, all kinds of different restaurants, leadership groups, and ended up ultimately showing people how to turn around their business and make profit even when they were losing and going out of business. And that's pretty interesting, especially nowadays with the COVID going on and restaurants being affected. How do you seeing that all take place?
Yeah, there's a lot happening in the restaurant industry right now. And my belief is COVID just magnified pre-existing issues. So a lot of the challenges that we're seeing in the news today of staff shortages, short profits, turnover, we're all existing pre-COVID, but just the spotlight's on. And the challenge for operators now is, it's try to survive if you can. And if you don't make tweaks and changes around your people, you're not going to survive. You're going to end up closing your doors. So I see right now that there's a lot of opportunity in the market for those that choose to take action, do something different.
If you want to follow this cat, at Matt_Rolfe, ROLFE_WS on social media. You can also find him at mattrolfe.com. You can also go to westshorehospitality.com. So Matt, ultimately you just mentioned staff shortages. Now, a lot of people in a lot of industries are talking about staff shortages because ultimately the government was handing out those checks. Now that's ended, hasn't it?
Yeah, in a lot of markets, it's ended or it's being reduced. So we're at the back end of subsidies keeping people at home. But I think there's really a deeper issue when I look into it, because we're seeing managers that were being paid $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 that aren't returning to work. So I think there's part of it's subsidy or support to get people through this financially. But I think as we look to retail in general, not just restaurants, there's cracks. People are overworked, they're burnt out. And they don't trust the industry anymore. So they're looking at it going, do I want to go back into an environment that has that much risk for myself and my family? Or do I need to find more stability? So we can blame, the government support. It's definitely a factor. Now but it's not the total.
And you're in Canada, yeah?
I am, yeah, Canada's one.
So the Canadian government has a lot of issues right now, at least what we see from the news down here in the States.
Absolutely.
So were you guys passing out checks to stay home as well?
Yeah, it was a similar structure. We're looking at about 80% on a $43,000 or $45,000 base pay. So that's what I mean. So like the people are at home for hundreds of dollars. So I think people that chose to stay home, it's short term. It's not sustainable. You might be able to stay home and not go back to your job, but it wasn't enough to support yourself, especially in a major city or your family on.
So West Shore Hospitality, you help restaurants, nightclubs, hotels, mainly leadership, or who are you helping in that?
We're helping leadership. So as you said in the brief intro there, we used to just go into restaurants that ultimately were struggling and find opportunity to really push profit to the bottom line. And what I found was it wasn't a process issue. We could easily fix processes for any restaurant, but I found a pattern of people. It's really creating behavior change through people to do things different in the restaurant to get a different result. And who we focus on now, we really work with the top 10% of the market. So in the hotel chains, we work with a lot of Marriott properties. We work with multi-site restaurant groups, 5 to 30 locations. Some of our clients have hundreds of locations. But we're ultimately getting the people side of the business right so they can drive their staff and their concept forward.
So let's say someone's listening, they've got a restaurant or a small mom and pop type boutique restaurant. What do you call the little ones that are just one?
Yeah, what we call independent would be an industry coming from the supplier side. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say there's a bunch of independents listening to this. What would you tell the big wigs that are paying you all that dough to come fix their problem? Wouldn't it work for an independent?
Absolutely.
So what are some of the things that you go in there and do and teach?
The first thing, if we're going to go into an independent, and I think you'd say the same from watching you as a fan, Brad, is just really look at, is it a sustainable business? It's a cash flow game right now. Cash is king. And I think there's a lot of people emotionally holding on to their businesses. They have wage subsidy for employees, but we've also got subsidies for small businesses and rent support. But do you really have a sustainable business? Because as we know, 90% of entrepreneurial startups go bankrupt in their first 5 years. And I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just making sure that we are wrapping ourselves around a sustainable business. And then if I was to coach anything next, it's just making sure that we have a clear strategy of how do we win. You're in Vegas, I'm in Toronto, but we could go to a small town anywhere in North America and it doesn't need another restaurant. So why, if you're an independent, why does your community, your strip, your street need you to exist? What are you going to offer that community? How are you going to interact with them? And when we really focus on our why, what was the vision before we put the key in the door once the bank gave us the loan? What's the why that made you put it all on the line to open up that door and make sure it's still in front of you as the owner or manager, but also your staff. Your staff are going to be different from pre-pandemic or pre-closure. So how do we make sure that we're really grounded as to why do we exist? What are we looking to do here that's special? Because there's going to be empty seats in every city in North America. So if we want to survive, we got to do something special.
I just went to Manhattan, ate at a place called Ben and Jack's Steakhouse. Delicious food, killer atmosphere, cool vibe. To me, and I'm not in the hospitality, nor have I ever been, but I think if I open up a restaurant, it would succeed. Why? I don't know. Because of the food that I cook, the atmosphere that I provide, and the staff that I employ. Are those the three things you got to worry about, or no?
I think they are. So, but there's really a secret sauce in there. It's focusing on your culture and your people. So Brad, guys like us, I literally have clients that are sitting on tens of millions of dollars that could go build a restaurant anywhere they want. So they can come into Vegas or go to that location in New York, look at the vibe, the design, the menu, and rip it off. But what they can't rip off is your people. So what's the human capital behind the business? What's creating the experience? The steak that you had, I'm sure you've had lots of great steaks coming from one of the best restaurant cities in the world in Vegas. But the steak was good. But somebody created something that made it, you gave it that vibe, that feel. And that happens by design, not by fluke. So if we were going to invest in a restaurant, I think we could do it. But my focus is wrapped around the people. And we do a 3-step process. What are the 3 things we're looking to do with every guest? Start of the experience, middle, and end. And if we can execute that relentlessly, consistently, we win.
So then training is probably pretty important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How are you? Now, I know that you have a training system because it happens to be on Lightspeed VT, and you've put together a training system for organizations that are looking to, train their leadership on how to establish these cultures. But when you get to a, independent level where, you don't have time to go in and help every individual and independent, how can they number one, can they get a hold of you now? Because with that virtual training system, you've got the ability to scale enormously.
And the reason why, and we did a really extensive search, Brad, before we ended up, with your team and your product as we thought was best for us. But the point was, I can help major restaurant groups, slightly shift their direction of their company, and I love that work. But why we invested the last 2.5 years into this venture is we want to reach a larger audience. I've seen too many independent operators lose their business, lose their homes, lose their marriage. At some point, I've got people that I saw when I worked in the beer industry that still keep me up at night. I wanted to create, a training product where they themselves, they can work on them first. Independent restaurant or group, what's my strategy? What's my approach? But also something you take to your managers and your staff, because the solutions are the same. You just got to work them to your scale.
Well, give me an example, because I'm pretty bright, and I'm thinking to myself, if this restaurant had, I'll give you an example. My wife makes the best biscuits and gravy you've ever had. I guarantee you they're unbelievable. Unbelievable. Every time I have them, and I don't have much because I'm mainly on a keto diet, but every time I have them, I think to myself, I'm going to go down there and rent that spot, open up just for breakfast, serve biscuits and gravy, and that's it. Yeah. Would that fail? Well, in my mind, no, because everyone's going to love these biscuits and gravy. How many fall victim to that, where your myopic thinking is costing you the whole shebang?
I think the single focus, the laser focus thinking, as we have a vision in our minds about biscuit and gravy, and I can see it, I can smell it, I can see the plate. And how great your wife cooks it. But then we open up a restaurant and there's a people factor and there's guests that are happy or pissed off or parties. And then we find ourselves 3 months, 6 months, 5 years later, we forgot about the biscuits and gravy and why we opened the business. But one thing we work on with our clients, no matter what their size or scale, and we recently did a leadership workshop pre-COVID. We had 200 of the top restaurant operators in Canada in a room. And these are like the top 1% of the industry, about 6 people per group. And halfway through the session, as we built some trust, I said, who in here in the room could stand up and clearly articulate to your team exactly how you win right now? So not your P&L, not your profit goals, your target goals, but how do you win? Like, what's the one goal that when we celebrate, what's get great biscuits and gravy on the plate every single time? Because my wife's recipe is the best. That's how you win. And out of these 200 leaders, and some of the best, they weren't confident enough to stand up. So I work with them on, let's get how do we win? What's the singular focus that's going to produce the best result? Tactics and shit can follow after, but for the independent, it's just getting back to how do we win right now? What do we need to do? Again, to connect to our guests, to deliver a quality product, to connect with our staff. But I think if you were coaching any retailer, any sales team, what's the focus that gets the best return on time right now?
Man, it sounds easy, but to me as a consumer, because again, I'm eating at these restaurants, 9 times out of 10, if I walk into a restaurant that's not necessarily, very nice, but the food is amazing, I'm going back because of the food.
Yeah.
If I go into a restaurant, the food's amazing, but the people are kind of assholes, I'm still going back because of the food, unless it's obviously egregious. But the food to me should be like the key. And you're saying that there's people with kick-ass food and they get the restaurant, still go out of biz?
Absolutely. Because there's so much choice. So one of the cities that we worked at recently in the States, went into a major city and they had 1,308 new restaurants open up that year. So, and it's in Denver. So we went 1,300 new restaurants open up that year. So if we like to go out 20 times a year, the chance, like great food, we might go back once, but just based on sheer choice and turnover in our industry, even if we have great food, it doesn't mean we're going to be drawn back based on the amount of revolving door that is just, it's always existed in our industry. Again, 80% of restaurants go bankrupt in their first 5 years, even including some of the great ones. So if we have that much turnover, I think great food is one of the foundations, but great food around somebody who creates an experience. And to be clear, if there's one thing, if there's anybody, a retailer listening to this or a restaurant owner listening to this, the great experience isn't created by the staff member. The great experience is created by consistent messaging and leadership from the management team, creating a standard. I saw on Lightspeed, we've got Tony Robbins, and Tony Robbins talks about what are your must-dos versus your should-dos. Well, the absolute must-dos, every guest you interact with, we must do this. And those behaviors are learned skills from leadership and management. We can't be dependent on any one individual staff to lead our restaurant forward. Recently, I stayed at a Sheraton hotel. They invited me out for a new opening. And it's a place in Niagara Falls, and they had a $50 million investment in the property. And beautiful changes to the restaurant, to the hotel property. But what stood out for me is they had a fundamental shift in their staff. Every staff acknowledged every guest. They guided people to the table. It's a tourist destination. They recommended where to go if you're trying to find your way up Lundy's Lane. And I don't even remember what my room looked like. I'm in so many hotels, but I remember the chef in the restaurant who told me where to take my 5-year-old daughter that day. And I'll go back to the Sheraton, not just in Niagara Falls, but where I travel now. People creating experiences.
One time I was a waiter at a restaurant. I outsold dessert 10-1. Like I literally sold more dessert than the rest of the staff. All I did different than the rest of the staff was ask for the dessert order when I asked for the dinner order. But you will see very few restaurants do this. The only ones I've ever seen do it, they don't do it for the whole dessert. They just do it because there's a special dessert that takes a while. And I've had people say, just let you know, dessert tonight, we're having a souffle. It takes about 40 minutes. We're limited on the things. So if you're interested in the souffle, I need to put that order in now. And of course, I'm always like, well, yes or no. But my point is, if a restaurant just simply asked for the dessert with the dinner order, they would sell more desserts guaranteed. How come more don't do that?
And I think I couldn't agree with you more. And watching some of your podcasts, you use a term about touching palms, right? So it's just asking for the sale, touching more people, touching more guests. because we leave it to assumption and not to expectation. And I think the messaging, we want you to ask for dessert orders because we want to sell more desserts. It's not the message. Do you have a significant other? Yes. Do you guys go on vacation? Because we're actually going to give you some time on vacation. I've got a plan in place that if you recommend these desserts, they're actually the best in Vegas. If you recommend these desserts to our guests and they love them, here's the reviews. You're actually, through the tips you make just by recommending these, you get to go to Mexico for free on us. Just got to follow the process. And then we put a scoreboard up that's celebrating, souffle sales. And then we celebrate the winner and we create a structure where there's peer-to-peer learning. So it's the server who went to Mexico sharing with the team in the next staff meeting, say, hey, I did this and I got the benefit. It wasn't something told to me. And here's the picture of me in Mexico. And then we have peer-to-peer motivation. And I think we're just missing some of the steps. Sometimes we miss the framing of the expectation. Do it for me. But what we're trying to do is we can create expectation, do it for a great guest experience. But what we're designing for our staff to execute consistently is for them. We want to create, it has to benefit, the staff has to give a shit about it. And if we could frame it to benefit the staff, then they're going to buy in. But sell more desserts because we want to sell more desserts.
So this is what
traditionally fails.
So when you walk into these places, you're grabbing the managers and the leadership of the place and you're educating them on how to basically create the culture in the organization, create competition, which is culture. And you would think every single one of them are different. No.
Every single leader or restaurant?
Yeah, in other words, this restaurant we did this and that restaurant we did that, but or does it apply to the principles apply no matter what kind of restaurant, whether you're breakfast and lunch or breakfast, lunch and dinner or fine dining or fast food or a bar with a kitchen.
Yeah. And I think when I look back to the start of the work that I did, is I was doing so much leadership development studying. And if we read, Jim Collins' book, Tony Robbins' book, any of Grant Cardone's book, and we read those concepts, there's common patterns, right? My goal is just to bring common business strategy into the hospitality industry. And it is the structure is the same, the little details of the independent restaurant to the 50 location group based out of Vegas is different, but we have to start with what's the goal. We might be in a boardroom and the goal is we want to double sales or we want to make $2 million in profit this year. And then what we're going to do is go through a simple process is what are the key drivers? And then as we distill it down, then it's about selling desserts. Because the increase in sales that they need to double their profitability comes down to adding $4 to every average check or $1. I literally had a client last year that were focused. They needed to find an extra $1 million. So when we ended up, we had a strategy through 150 quick service franchise locations to find the dollar. And we found $3 million in additional profit for the restaurant group and hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional tips based on the passionate recommendations. And it's just waterfalling. We have to start with what's the intention from the leadership team. And then it just distills to a consistent behavior delivered through the staff. That's any sale, that's any retail environment. My space, it just happens to be restaurants.
So tips are crucial to waiters.
Yeah.
Now, do you have courses for waiters or are you only talking to managers?
Right. So the way that what we're usually brought into, so we'll talk to somebody and they'll say, we want you to come in and talk to our staff. And I've led thousands of large scale staff meetings in my career, literally thousands. And they're exciting and they're entertainment. So the staff leave. But the pattern that I found is if the management team's not bought into what's presented, by the outside company, me or any other coach or consultant, then it fails. So we know if we wanted to get consistency, we had to get alignment at the leadership or management level. So we do that. Our information is designed to benefit the staff experience. The reality is right now, every restaurant in North America is short-staffed. So I challenge, I know it's a big statement, but every operator is short-staffed. So we have to think about our audience, and our audience actually isn't our guest right now. It's how do we create an experience that's going to keep somebody wanting to come back in the four walls of our restaurant. So what we do with leadership teams is designed to benefit staff. Right now, we will build that out with our Lightspeed strategy, and we haven't shared that with you yet, but we will get to a course in 2022 that'll go direct to staff. But the failure, if we go direct to staff and don't have buy-in from the management, it fails.
Yeah. So if I'm listening to this and I own a restaurant or even a chain of restaurants, what other than calling you, what are some things that I could just go think about and or implement that would make a little bit of a difference, and a small difference or a big difference?
Yeah, the one thing I talk about now, and if I could, give away a solution that anybody could use right now, if you're having a hiring crisis, the one thing you have to do is revisit your attract strategy. And there's a couple of steps here. Just they're not, they might sound complicated. They're very, very simple. With your track strategy, I encourage you to revisit your job ad. If it's an independent restaurant or if it's a multi-site group, they haven't actually really looked at their job ad in a long time. So I want you to change with your job ad. If you want to stand out from your competitors, because most of your candidates are viewing you on Indeed or LinkedIn or something like that, put your candidate first. Why would the potential hire want to work in your restaurant? Every restaurant's talking about themselves right now at the top. Why us? Our culture, our job, what we need from you. We need to stand out from our competitors in our job ad. And the real aha here, step 2 in your track strategy, most restaurants are getting a good amount of resumes, but they're not filtering appropriately. So what used to happen is we'd call a candidate once and say, you come to my interview or I'm not going to hire you. The reality is the game changed. They have the leverage. They're what's in shortage. If we want to fix your hiring problem, I would put a bet on for most operators. We just have to, like Brad, like you say, we got to increase our activity around calling qualified candidates. So you might have to call a qualified candidate that we like their resume 5 times. And I would create a metric for your manager, whether you're a diner or a nightclub in Vegas, and you want to call them 5 times to make sure we reach them and we're sharing with them the experience we can create by having them join our team. And then the third thing, I just change your interview. The interview process died a long time ago. You got to update it.
What is the average age of a restaurant worker?
I think it really depends by market and by concept. So I think we go to the 18 to 24-year-old demographic, and that even if we look to management, right? So we go 18 to 24-year-old of people joining the industry, they like it, they get pulled into management and then work their way through the industry. But the challenge of the 18 to 24-year-old demographic is they're looking through us to other jobs. They're not looking to stay in hospitality. We go home and the holidays are coming up, whether it be Thanksgiving or Christmas, and they say, hey, I'm a supervisor at a restaurant. So great. That's a great stepping stone for something else. What's next for you? It's what Uncle Tom says over Thanksgiving dinner. What we want people to see, that 18 to 24-year-old demographic, we got to show them a path to leadership to get them to stay. Got to show why they should stay. And I don't know if that's where you're going with the demographic question, but it's young. But Gen Y excites me. Gen Z excites me. They just need leadership.
Yeah, well, they need leadership more than anyone. I've read a couple studies on the younger crowd like that. They will seek opportunity more than they will compensation. And if they don't have a clear path of opportunity, they leave.
And that's what we stole from the Gallup organization years ago. They've been doing an 8 million person staff engagement survey every year. And the survey consistently comes back that says once somebody's base financial needs are met, what they want in their employment is the ability to grow and develop. So we have a workforce. Yes, we got to get comp right. If they can't make their rent, then they're going to go looking for another job. And we can't give them a salary or wage we can't afford. And so you got to get that right. But if you don't have a growth and development strategy, and for any industry, I've got someone on my team who's Gen Z looking at me right now. And she's a rock star. I know she leaves me inside of 6 months if I don't have an ability for her to learn and grow inside my organization. And that's not her leaving me. That's not me creating the opportunity to provide her what she needs at this stage of her career.
I would think part of a strategy for management is the mindset that you're going to have turnover. It's just going to happen. Why?
Yeah.
Well, because dude, like when I was younger and I was a waiter, I was younger. When you start to get older, a waiter job is not going to cut it. And I don't know what managers at a restaurant make because I never became one, but I don't even think a manager job would cut it. If you're trying to get rich or you're entrepreneurial in any way. So I would think if I owned a restaurant, I better get used to turnover, meaning I've got a strategy for turnover. And this, by strategy, I mean a training system, not just hey, follow Bobby around and Bobby will tell you how to do all the closing work and, take orders and turn in orders and yada, 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 but a training system.
Yeah, absolutely. Training's it's not an event, right? It's a process. Right? Somebody recently, and Brad, this is your line, but training's not something you did, it's something you do, right? And we can wrap training around, but the average restaurant pre-COVID had 100 to 120% annual staff turnover. And we don't, I just worked with one of North America's best restaurant groups. Average store sales were over $10 million. We got their turnover down to 70%. And what we learned, it was too low. We're actually better suited to have a feeder system of leaders at 80%. But we needed to make sure that we had a strategy with 80% planned turnover, that when as we want and we crave, we're constantly attracting new leaders, and we have a plan and a process. Once they get leaders or staff, once they get inside of our organization, we have to have a plan to develop them. The biggest thing COVID exposed for me, Brad, and we could go on LinkedIn right now and look at all of the global major brands right now. We could look at Four Seasons I saw today, the Ritz-Carlton, every major restaurant group in North America, Shake Shack, that's hiring general managers, regional directors. They're hiring senior positions. So what that spotlights for us is, we had the right people to lead our restaurants pre-COVID. We weren't investing in our future leaders. We weren't investing in the supervisors, managers that had to step up. So as the senior managers left, they created a massive gap. Now everyone's trying to hire from outside, and we just know that doesn't work. They don't know our culture. But COVID exposed the fact that we're not investing in the core of our organizations. And if we need to train.
Train effectively.
Correct.
I don't know if I've ever told you this on our offline calls, but when I started my own business, I went out to train people sales and closing. I became very good at it. I developed a lease presentation that allowed me to get customers to lease a car rather than buy a car quickly and easily. A long time ago, very few people would lease their vehicle. A lot of people still won't because they think it's a bad deal, even though it's better for them than a purchase. But with that being said, I quit my job, went out on the road, and started training people live. And I thought I would get the same result I was getting when I worked for a company. And I found very quickly that I couldn't get the same results, and I couldn't figure out why. Well, I started to do research, and I started to say, okay, what did I used to do versus what am I doing now? And I boiled down to 4 key ingredients: good content, repetition, practice, and accountability. Now, when I quit my job and went out on the road, I lost repetition because I wasn't working there every day. I lost accountability because they didn't work for me. And I lost the ability to practice and role play. I did it a little bit, but not very much. So I had the good content, but I didn't have the repetition, practice, and accountability. And the problem with that is I couldn't effectively train people. I thought it was just the good content. If you know what to do, that's all you need. Well, that's not true. What you need is good content, repetition, practice, and accountability. So if I'm in a restaurant industry and I know for a fact I'm going to have turnover no matter what, I better understand that right away and have a training system. The difference between a system, it's not just a video, it's not just a book that someone walks through for a week, but a system that constantly delivers good content, repetition, practice, and accountability, knowing full well, even if you do a kick-ass job, they're leaving eventually. So now you've got a revolving door. Well, if you don't have a system in place to facilitate a good onboarding, training, system, I think you're setting yourself up for a much harder job. So I don't know if you guys are looking at that for your VT strategy, but if I were you, I would start wrapping my mind around, how do I walk into a restaurant, independent or otherwise, and give them a system that has the good content with the ability to deliver, track, and measure it with repetition over and over. You guys are kind of leadership experts, but I think that 2022 thing you mentioned is going to gain a little bit of fire, because if I'm a restaurateur and I know about you guys and you walk in and you hand me this kick-ass interactive system with all the content I would need to train my greeters, my waiters, my chefs, my prep cooks, my whoever, whatever positions are in the facility, and I give you, and I'm just making up a number, I give you, $500 a month, depending on the size of my business. I give you $500 a month, and now I have a system to train and whatnot. But on top of that, how about find, recruit, and onboard? Find, recruit, and train. Because if there's a shortage, why? Yeah. Well, they can't find anybody. Well, how does leadership find? And then once they find them, what's the process? Or as you say, process.
That's different than it's.
Yeah,
I still think we're saying it right, Brad, but I got it.
You're from Canada. You know why they say A after everything?
Sorry, but And that's what we're like, really where we're starting this. And that's the program that we're taking to market next week is, there's a program that you can go through now. And how do you attract, how do you retain, and then how do you develop your people? And it's the start of the process, through what we've created, is just to think differently about it. There's not a one size band-aid. You still need to do you, but there are simple processes. You could fix those critical strategies next week. No bullshit, next week, but you got to take time to look at it. Then once we get the traction there, then I agree. We need an ongoing reoccurring system, because if not, who's doing the training? That's right. We're doing the training live, and who's traditionally doing is our highest paid employees. So our $80,000 general manager is spending 70% of the year training staff that are set up to leave because it's a broken system. Fix the system, get your managers coaching, not just training. And COVID allowed us in the restaurant industry, we can use Zoom now. Virtual training is in demand. Gen Y, Gen Z wants to watch on their bus, their training program, on the way to work on the bus. They want to take 10 minutes to go through the training program, then coach through human interaction, support through virtual training is, there's systems out there. We also, you got an iPhone in your pocket. If your budget's zero, you got an iPhone in your pocket, give it a shot, but there's better systems.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these restaurants that we run into, they've got a training system that's not a system at all. It's a video online. They tell people to watch the video and they consider them trained. Well, that's not training, folks. Otherwise, I'd be a black belt. I watch a ton of mixed martial arts. Doesn't make me a black belt. Why? Well, because there's no repetition, there's no practice, and there's no accountability. You have to have those things regardless of the industry you're in. So if you're out there thinking, well, I don't own a restaurant, but this still applies. Okay, train your people with good content, repetition, practice, and accountability. That applies to the brand new, entry level position all the way to the leadership and top level positions. Sometimes, and you hit it on the head earlier, sometimes I see companies, they'll get a training system from us and then they'll put in, average content. And then they don't make everybody go through it with repetition. They don't even make anyone go through it at all. It's almost like voluntary. Like, here's a training system if you want it. So specifically in the restaurant business, if I know that, I got to be able to find them and attract them, you've got a course for that. I need to be able to create culture. You've got a course for that. If someone, by the way, reaches out to you for that help and implements that system, just so you know, you guys have the ability to allow them to put in custom stuff next to yours. So now their own proprietary, my restaurant, we do, butter. What are the dishes that come with the butters? What are those called? Those little
butter tarts? Yeah.
No. Like a little thing full of butter.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
There's a word for the butter dish.
I see you looking at your crew behind you. Someone's got to know where Sam, you got
I mean, I can
Sam's fiercely Googling butter dish, but
I can call my brother-in-law because he's a chef.
Yep.
And he said it the other day and I couldn't remember. I'm like, nobody would know that that's called that.
Yeah. Well, see, there you're putting me on the spot. Sam's finding some weird stuff when she Googles it. So I don't know if she wants to share that with you, Brad. But.
Well, let me know if she finds it. Otherwise I can call my brother-in-law. It's not important, but I was just going to drop a bomb on people. Cause like if you're at a restaurant and you say, hey, can you bring me a blank of butter? They'll be like, damn, you must be from the industry. So Matt, let's go back a moment. How old are you now?
40.
Okay. So back when you were 18 years old, you lived in Canada. Yeah.
Yep, I did.
And you told me people said you weren't going to make it. Why? Were you shitty in school?
I was diagnosed loosely with a learning disability at a young age. And I've gone through spent a lot of money on therapists, and, really the school system didn't know what to do with me. So I got put in, the learning strategies class, or the, class full of 8 kids that are either getting in shit or really did have learning disabilities. And unfortunately, the school system up here in Canada at the time, didn't have an ability to find out how to manage my energy. So that was looked at as, I had to work on it, but that I should leave the school system and find what they called alternative employment. Go get a trade job.
Did you graduate or no?
I did. Yeah. And that's, I got a chip on my shoulder at a young age, right? I got into sales, was my first, really learning to sell, because that was my little FU back to people. That's the badge I wore for a long time, which I've matured through. But my side was I graduated through high school, graduated through college, but it was just through sheer will and focus.
But you did go to college.
I did, yeah. Yep.
And then when you graduated, what was it? What was the degree in?
Tourism management. That's what they call it. So my dream was to work at a ski resort up here in Canada. So to be surrounded by snow. And luckily enough, my two co-ops, my first co-op in college was with Bacardi, as we all know, is a global giant. And the second one was with Labatt up here in Canada, but it's called owned by Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah, didn't they find Pam Anderson?
They did. So the other show they had a Winnipeg Blue Bombers game.
So you're right out of college. Excuse me. You're right out of college.
Yep.
You graduated, so you weren't that big of a trouble kid. Like I dropped out like a freaking dipshit. But hey,
Sure.
I don't know if you know this. Now I've got 2 PhDs, 4 MBAs, and 13 bachelor degrees.
So where does that come from for you, Brad? Like, where does that, because obviously there was something there that drove you out of school, but that's an incredible investment, in yourself. But where does the drive to go and, put all those degrees behind you?
No, I just hired them.
Oh, you hired them. Got it.
I didn't. You
set me up for that one. That's good. So
you don't have to earn them if you can hire them.
Yeah.
But you already touched on the one thing I could do, and that's sell, close, and persuade.
Yeah.
And if I were a waiter or a manager at a restaurant, I would understand one thing. Regardless, folks, you're in sales. Wait staff, they're in sales for up, like you said, $4 more, a little dessert here, a little dessert there. Management, you're selling people on staying. You're selling people on wanting to work for you. You're in sales regardless. So I would think if you're in the restaurant game, you better start focusing on some sort of sales curriculum. Because dude, you're in sales, and I've never been trained sales at a restaurant. Maybe that would be another unique thing West Shore could do.
Yeah, and there's sales for staff, but it's also, I think, like what you're sharing here, how I hear it is getting comfortable with, as leaders, we sell ideas for a living. Like that's like we're all selling, and your messaging or Dan Pink's book, To Sell Is Human, one of the first books to make the top sellers list in sales in decades. But that's a book that we give to so many of our leaders, because we're not selling a physical product as a leader often, but we're selling belief around a concept. Why should anybody give a shit about our vision and our strategy? And that's really the work that we're doing. So because people can relate to getting a server to increasing average check. What we're getting is a 22-year-old, 27, 32-year-old manager to be confident, be able to sell through rich and vivid stories, not sell through strong hands because they don't work anymore, or strong tones. But to sell in a concept of, this is what our must-dos are as a business, but this is how you get the most from your employment here. And if you don't believe in that, that's fine, but don't let them quit and stay inside your restaurant. Don't let them quit and not live your values. Let them quit and go work inside somebody else's restaurant. Mm-hmm. Once we're selling ideas, we can have the right people working around us. The 13 people you've got.
All right. So you're, I guess, 20 some years old, you graduate, and now you land a gig with Bacardi right out the gate. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And what was that doing? Selling booze?
Yeah. Selling booze. We were selling to restaurants and selling to the retail environment back then, which I really love. So just selling to liquor stores, bottle shops, and Bacardi's a big brand, but it was really learning market share in a very competitive market. And then I got exposure to the restaurant side, which was, confusing to me, because there's all these, big, busy restaurants, but they're asking me for, $500 for a banner because they didn't have it. That's where I really started to see, like, there's a problem here. They're selling lots of product, but there's not a profitability strategy. And then as I moved on to Labatt or Anheuser-Busch, you really got to learn, what AB does at a great level is they teach their junior sales reps to start to understand the business side of the industry. And I started to hunt for it. And there was just simple patterns that people not understand. The people were never showing, they often bought a restaurant emotionally or grew up in a restaurant and took it over in many cases. But the foundation of how that business was financially successful wasn't a clear calculation for a lot that we could quickly fix.
Dude, I had a buddy one time, excuse me. I had a buddy one time who was friends with August Bush. They called him Augie.
Augie, yeah.
You know Augie?
I don't know Augie. He didn't come to Canada. I got a chance to spend some time with Carlos Brito, who's the just outgoing CEO. But Augie, I've heard the stories about the helicopters and the top floors.
This guy's a young guy.
Yep.
And he's a Bush from Anheuser-Busch. Yep. Yeah. Like, can you imagine being a kid who's freaking, I don't know who owns it, but like Budweiser?
Yeah, what he did, like when it was there, obviously there's lots of investors, but they still had a strong controlling share up until, recently, in my career when they were brought up, when Carlos Brito came up with his crew, and they bought Interbrew, and then they bought they took merged with Ambev, and then they took over Budweiser. So it's probably the best story in a consumer packaged goods of our generation. But yeah, Augie's story is pretty great when you look at what they had in St. Louis and what they built, right? Not just a brand, but an infrastructure of people and loyal customers behind. People are relentless for Budweiser, Bud Light, and everything else they got.
What do you think about someone thinking about starting a liquor company?
And you see the stories, right? So we see there's lots of people starting liquor companies right now and then getting celebrities to back the brands. And, it really started with, P. Diddy and the Ciroc story. Like Diageo essentially gave him Ciroc. I had one of my close friends was in the room when he accepted the deal. And he said, I'm going to make a 12 million case brand. And everybody laughed at him. And it's one of the biggest success stories. So P. Diddy makes more money off Ciroc than anything else that he does every year. Hundreds of millions of dollars are going across to his side. So anybody looking at it, I think it's just, again, it's an overly saturated market, but there's an opportunity to find what's the underserviced niche. What does your product bring? We're seeing that in the tequila side. Obviously tequila is huge right now. The Rock is a celebrity example of that, but you got gin, you've got craft beer.
Well, what about Patron? That was John Paul DeJorio.
Yeah, one of my closest friends in the industry up here, Gavin Gomes, just took over Patron for Canada, so he's going to lead that brand, and it's a giant, but it's just catching fire right now. Like when you see what the market share that Patron continues to take in the volume scale, it's incredible story.
Well, I had an idea a while back. I was going to start a tequila company and call it Vampire or V. There would just be a big V on this ornate bottle. I wanted it to be like a pewter bottle with glass inside, almost like an old, bottle you'd see in some freaking Transylvanian castle. And it's the difference that I've never seen, and I still haven't seen it. So if someone's listening to this and you guys do it, man, cut a brother a piece. But it's a bottle of Vampire tequila in an ornate bottle, and the tequila is aged in Cabernet barrels, and it literally comes out almost blood red. Yep. So it's like a blood red tequila. And I'm telling you, if you ever go get a shot of tequila and a little bit of Cabernet or some sort of red wine and just pour a little bit of red wine in the tequila and then shoot it, it takes out the bite. It's weird. You know how tequila sometimes is like, oh, well, you pour a little tiny bit of wine in that tequila, because we did it one night when we were drunk. It takes the bite out of the tequila and it makes the tequila blood red. So imagine like a really high-end blood red tequila, and the only reason it's blood red is because you age it in old wine barrels that pull the tannins out from the oak.
But what I love about that is it's the story behind it, right? It's just creating a story behind, we don't need another tequila brand, but do we need a blood red tequila from Cabernet barrels? Yeah, we do. We could sell that, and staff will buy into it. And you look at Jägermeister. I don't know. It's been a long time. I'm getting old, but it's been a while since I put a shot of Jägermeister in my mouth. But it's not the best tasting liquid. But they just created a story similar to that one. That's one of the world's largest spirit brands.
Well, what about freaking what's that cinnamon crap? Fireball.
Fireball. Hey, that's it. Sam here. She's got a bottle in her pocket. It's weird, but it's Friday up here, so it's Fireballs. Bud Lights and Fireballs, right? That's Bud Light, Fireballs, and White Claws is what's flying. But there's
look at Clooney.
Yep.
Clooney's a billionaire now from Casa, whatever.
Yeah. And that's, well, you look at, and then, so you got what he sold for how many billions of dollars he sold the stake in the brand. But then you got Dwayne Johnson, who blew his sales out of the water inside of 12 months.
Is that Terramana?
Yeah. So it's 3 times he's projecting the sale. It's the world's best spirits launch. Best ever on record.
That's because it's The Rock, bro.
Hey, if there's a model of consistency for me, that's my man. So,
dude, everybody loves The Rock, man. When he voted for Joe Biden, that's the only time a lot of people said, fuck The Rock.
Yeah. So that's when you get it. See, I learned last time when I was down to see your office and to see you stay away from politics as a Canadian in the States. That's what I learned. There's a rally going on.
That's when he sank like a rock. Dude, I think
is he back? Like he's still up here. He's still our
I think anybody who voted for Joe Biden regrets it. I'm pretty sure that's the case. If there's anyone that thinks he's doing a good job,
Yeah.
they're not paying attention. But yeah, I mean, I don't stay away from politics, but I don't dwell in it, because guess what? It doesn't matter who's president. Shit's still going to happen, and you better still focus on yourself. If you're a restaurant and you're worried about who the president is, trust me, guys, don't focus on that shit. Focus on who are you, what are you providing, and then you just deal with all the crap that comes your way. But at the end of the day, man, if you're not operating from a position of strength, you're having trouble. You're having issues. So you work for Bacardi, then you went on to Anheuser-Busch, and then what got you to where, like, what were you doing that all of a sudden made you an expert in the restaurant business? There had to be a story where, one day you had a buddy that owned a restaurant and he was losing, so you went in there and showed him a couple things, and bam, he was profitable.
Yeah, that's the story. So I had a client that I was pursuing. He was our competitor. He was their biggest client. So I was a young guy. My boss said, we're going to put Matt on this guy. And I walked at his restaurant for the 32nd time in 6 weeks. And he said, you walk back in here one more time, I'm going to throw you out. I'm literally going to pick you up. But he was a funny guy, but he said, you got to get out of here. I'm with Molson as the company out here. And to fast track the story, we became really good friends. And he said, I think you're really good at what you do, but do you want to sell, bubbles and beer for the rest of your life? And I said, I don't know. And he showed me this approach. He had 6 restaurants, highly profitable, selling for, the high, when he would build and sell these restaurants, and he had a formula. And we're able to get a system out of Australia that allowed us to perform inventory. That's another company I have. So we do third-party inventory for restaurants. But we're able to go into his restaurants that were already, 18, 20+% net profitability. And by putting the system in, we found 600K. And we projected to have 600K ROI in the first year by the processes we put in place, and what I considered the best operator north of the city of Toronto. We got on a plane and we flew to Baltimore, which there was an office. And for about 8 minutes, we looked at this, a little bit of ego on our side. It's Mr. Kid Andrews, a dear friend of mine and mentor of mine. And we looked at each other and said, yeah, I said, I quit. I love Anheuser-Busch. I'm selling beer as a 20-something-year-old kid with hundreds of thousands of dollars of budget and all the promos and tickets you could want. But I said, I can change people's lives. We can do this together. And I left. I got home. I handed my resignation letter in. They handed it back to me. But a few months later, I left Anheuser-Busch. We launched a company. And like I said, then we just one a restaurant at a time started. What I say to people, we're not out there doing inventory, doing profit, doing leadership. We're changing people's lives. Those are the best calls I get still to this day of people we worked with 15 years ago that said they wouldn't have had their businesses or their houses or the ability to, buy their next mansion if we didn't set them on. We weren't responsible for it. We just put them on the path to do it.
Especially now, man. Like during COVID, dude, a lot of restaurants hit the bricks, man.
Yep. Even sorry, go ahead, man.
Well, just nobody was coming. I mean, what are you supposed to do? Well, listen, if I owned a restaurant and nobody was coming, if I was a restaurant, I'm delivering. I would have made some sort of pivot, some sort of shift. I wouldn't have just sat there and said, "Oh, we're in lockdown." Bullshit, dude. I'll pass out flyers in neighborhoods and near my restaurant. I'm going to be cooking 24/7. I'll deliver food. We've got, freaking, hazmat suits. Like I wouldn't have went out of business no matter what. I would have shifted and altered.
Yeah. And I think the side, what we worked with clients on is how do you pivot inside your business? So everybody looked at, we do have to do delivery and we've got to pivot and be innovative. But I said, what are we great at? What are we going to be best in our town, city, state, country? What are we best at? And let's go all in on that. And it could be that steak that you talked about. It could be the chicken and gravy. It could be whichever it is. But a lot of people, it was the experience. And then, okay, we're still going to be best in service. If people can't come in our restaurant, so how do we deliver that to their door? How do we work with delivery companies, whatever it is?
Well, what kind of experience? Again, there's only like when I feel experience, I'm like, experiences. I'm looking around, I'm experiencing it. Like STK, for example, great steak. Del Frisco's, great steak. Ruth Chris, great steak. But it's all the same shit if you ask me. Now STK's not, because they got loud thumping music and hot staff, and that's an experience because it's pumping music. You don't get that at the Del Frisco's and the Ruth Chris. So what kind of experience can someone put on in a restaurant?
So STK is somebody that we work with here in Toronto and our other company. So credible brand, credible growth plan, multiple concepts under the umbrella of the company. But we support the concept here of their other business. But if we break down my last visit to STK Vegas, you walk up and yes, they've got great staff. They've got good looking guys. They've got engaging people throughout the restaurants.
Don't forget girls.
But
they got
the girls, yeah.
Girls.
Yeah. But what I saw on this side is you look at that host at STK next time you go there, and anybody who's going there wants you to do this, look at the fundamental difference of how they greet you, how they come out from behind the host stand. They'll greet you, they'll physically come. They're not standing behind a barrier. How they're going to look you in their eyes. It's great to have attractive staff, male or females, but if they don't actually engage with you, I guarantee watch this next time you go to STK. They will talk to you on the way to the table. They're starting your guest experience on the way to the table. Nothing more I hate than looking at a fucking host back as I walk to the table. There's a sales opportunity there. We have 10 seconds or 45 seconds of walking time, excuse my language, but to get to the table. And I just want people to hear this. And so STK is starting the sales experience. And this, I'm not breaking apart their secret sauce or their service experience. It's not what we work with them on, but they're starting to engage with the guest. And then there's team service. So we have rotating, we're working a team service environment. And you look, and your wait times are times. One of the things we worked on with STK, they looked at how long it took to make that fancy cocktail and get it to the table. And they had a cocktail that took 17 minutes. So what does STK not have anymore? They don't have a 17-minute cocktail on their menu anymore. It doesn't work for their guests. We need to get more drinks on the table while they're there because they're having a fun environment. But if you were to dissect the experience that STK creates, it's remarkable the amount of effort, and it is not negotiable. You can't be a host and not start the service experience.
Well, they got rid of beef carpaccio.
Why did they do that? Give me more on that. Yeah, that's dude, no good, man. That's not a good thing for.
Dude, listen, I sent so many people and brought so many people to the one here at the Cosmopolitan because of the beef carpaccio. And as soon as they got rid of it, I just quit. I haven't been back.
So I'll have to talk to them. I'll have to draw you back because I know if they took it off, they'll have to have something to pull you back in. Because sometimes
the chef at this one, his name is Steve O. I was going to go in there for him a couple times too, because I met him at this golf tournament. Well, we had a few drinks. We're heading up there. I've got, I think, 9 people. I got a room in the back. There's 7 of us there. We show up. There's a big guy there, security type guy. He says, well, we'll seat you when your other 2 people get here. And so we waited like 5 minutes and again, I was drinking a little bit, so I was kind of being a little bit of a dick. And I said, let's go ahead and seat us. And, those other 2 people should be here. And he said, no, we'll seat you when your entire party's here. And I said, well, then let's say it's for 7. And then when they show up, we'll add 2 more. Yeah. He was being a total dick. Long story short, I used Steve-O's name because you would think the chef runs the place, right?
Yep.
So I used Steve-O's name. Long story short, they finally let me in after a big to-do. So after that experience, and that was an experience, the guy was a dick. Even though I was a little bit of a dick, he was a dick because, dude, there is a line to get in that place. They don't care that I was not coming back. They literally at that particular location have a little bit of an attitude because it's so packed.
Well, and here's the problem. There's a couple things like patterns just in what you share. It's a lot of restaurants are going to have flagship locations to drive your guests to other spots. So the challenge now, like if I look at what your average spend when you're taking 8 friends out, it's going to be 5. There might be a bunch of people spending money in Vegas, but I bet your bill would have been 5 times. So they didn't look at the lifetime value of Bradley in the restaurant. That's a huge mistake. And I don't care how sexy your restaurant is in Vegas. If you've got other concepts, you're representing a brand. So unfortunately, an individual. But when I talk about experience, what you said is, Matt, tell me about this experience because I don't get it. And that's the opportunity in the market because the average restaurant experience is average. It's not memorable.
Yeah. It's
a 7 or 8 out of 10 on a net promoter score. So we remember what we ate, but we don't remember even what it looked like. We don't remember what our server's hair color was. But if I'm looking in the restaurant industry, I'm like, that is the biggest opportunity we've ever had because we can interrupt the pattern. We can stand out. We have to find ways, not just to get a great steak on the table, because we can get a great steak at 10 other restaurants in any city across North America. It's just, how do we do something that is memorable? And the challenge why we're saying, well, tell me what experience is, because we're just not having them. Like I ask people in sessions, they tell me the last experience you have that was just, it was remarkable. And the disappointing side is often people can't share.
Well, do you help people come up with those ideas? Because like I went to a restaurant one time where the whole concept was they were rude to you.
Yeah, I've seen one in Vegas recently.
I think it was called like Dick's or something, and the wait staff like put you down and criticized you, and it was funny because you're in there, but like their whole concept was they put their dicks.
Yeah. And we do, like, we help with the strategy, and that's extreme, but we can look at other brands that, that stand out. You might say Dick's, or you might say Hooters. Like Hooters from the outside might look, and I know Hooters, they're not growing as much as they used to, but you might look at it for just a simple concept. It is incredibly designed on how they train their staff and how they interact and who they attract to work there. People might not like it, but it's just like Dick's. If you want to have someone who's going to be a dick to your staff, you got to make sure you're hiring the right employee avatar. So one thing we do with our clients, the two things here, is we help them design what their service strategy is. How are we going to be memorable? In a simple way, not a 10-page manual, not a 28 steps of service to go greet a guest, but we're going to create a simple 1-page strategy that's going to allow you to consistently deliver to your guest. And then we also think we work on our avatars. Who are our core employee avatars? Because if we're high, like it sounds like, and I say this respectfully to STK, but it sounds like we had a dickish doorman. So we can have a big, tall person, doesn't need to be a dick. But unfortunately, he might have been the right security person, but maybe not the right avatar to greet a Brad Lee, which would bring tens of thousands of dollars to your restaurant every year if you just understood.
Yeah, sometimes every month.
Next time I'm in Vegas, I think that's an invite, but I'll take you up on it.
Dude, next time you're in Vegas, I'll definitely bring you over there. I don't know if Steve-O's still the chef. I haven't been back since then because, again, I don't want to be the guy that was the dick. Because, quite frankly, dude, I worked at a restaurant before, and I don't trust people with my food. Like, there's that
sure,
dick.
You've seen it, yeah.
There's that dick. And by the way, that security guy probably knows everybody. They're all friends. And it's like, hey, loogie in that guy's food. Now, I don't know if, STK would be like, oh, we'd never do that. But you don't understand. Sometimes those employees, like one time I knew a guy that worked at a pizza parlor. He had freaking eczema all over his arm. And freaking he stirred the pizza sauce with his arm. And he had eczema scabs all over his arm, and he was laughing about it. And I said, dude, you're a freaking scumbag. Like that you don't do that shit. But literally every time I go to a restaurant, I'm very polite. I don't send shit back. I just, because I don't trust it. And so I don't mainly go back there because of that experience. And that guy might not even work there. So you're 100% right. Experience is key.
Well, and like you said, the challenge for the average guest is they're not going to be verbal with their complaint to you. If we look at the neutrals, we're just going to leave and not go back. And that's the risk because the managers don't see it. Because the metric of success is somebody going to complain or give us a 5-star review? It's like, what's in the middle? We have 10% of the industry that'll complain, 10% that'll give you 5-star reviews. But what we care about to have a sustainable business is that middle. And that's who we need to focus on. And in your case, if you had a silent complaint that, STK is never going to want for money. So it's not about them, but any restaurant you go to, there's hundreds I'm sure you've chosen not to go back to in Vegas over your time there.
Yeah, but I got to be honest, man. Usually it's the food. If the food's garbage more than twice, I don't go back. If the place is not clean, like dirty, I don't go back. If the staff, believe it or not, to me, the staff's not as important like you would think, but I'm a weird guy. Like I go for the food. I can go to a greasy shitball diner if they've got kick-ass whatever it is I'm ordering. I'll go there as long as the staff's not too much of dickheads. But to me, food's number one. If it's unbelievable, you can't get it anywhere else. Like Del Frisco's steak for a long time, I wouldn't go to any other steakhouse simply because of the steak. And by the way, Del Frisco's does it right. They are very good to me. Which is why I have, 200-person Christmas party there every year. Yep. But food, secondly, the vibe, or maybe you call it experience. Because again, when I walk in, if they're just normally working and the music's nice and there's a piano or whatever, to me, that's a vibe. It's not the experience. that's where I was trying to get to. Like, what is an experience?
Sure. And I think it's like, this is a perfect example for me of an avatar. So if for you, we would have, for just say it's a location in Vegas, but we would have a Bradley avatar. Like if you're at restaurants, we'd literally have a picture of someone, because you just explain what you want as a guest to create that experience. So if you're one of my core guests, I know the food's got to be right. I know the atmosphere and music's got to be right. I have the right staff to interact with you, but you don't need somebody standing on your shoulder trying to create an experience, because you're going to drive that for yourself and your guest. It's like if you came into one of the restaurants that I was coaching, I would coach them to define you as an avatar and stay out of your way. That's the experience you want. So for two interactive, you're going to know the wine you want. You're going to probably know the menu as a dominant, strong guy. So we would, in a lot of cases, we have to understand what our guest wants and needs. And in Vegas, there's definitely a lot of restaurants should have a Bradley avatar and understand how to deliver what you want and need. And it doesn't necessarily, and that would create the experience. And it's quick, timely service with the right staff that give you what you want. But also to let you control the experience. I wouldn't be pushing one of my clients to drive a person in your seat, drive the experience for them. Is that fair?
It is. And again, I only asked you for an hour, so we're a little over an hour, so I don't want to keep you too long, but here's what I will say. This is free to anyone listening. Matt, you can implement this as an idea generated by West Shore. You can take it and own it. But here is something I've never seen a restaurant do. And here is a restaurant I would return to while I'm eating. Massage. Can you imagine sitting there waiting for your food and someone comes up behind you and, hopefully you got male and female, because I don't want no dude doing it, but somebody comes up behind you and just rubs your shoulders, like gives you a good 5-10 minute shoulder rub. Holy shit. Of course, I love massages, but I've never seen a restaurant ever just have a roaming masseuse. I would think about that. Now, to me, that's what I was trying to drive towards. Like, that's an experience. It's not just, clean dishes. That's cleanliness. But an experience is like, dude, you go in there and eat there. They'll rub your shoulders while you're waiting for your food. Like literally they just go around the table and hit everybody for about 5 minutes and it just relaxes you. Like I go back just for that. I would go back just for that. I go back for certain people, like a sommelier that's like really funny dude that we like, we're going to go back. Certain wait staff where like their sense of humor, just who they are. I go back for that.
Yep.
And then ask for dessert orders during dinner. I would train your whole staff to do it. I guarantee you'll double, triple, quadruple your sales of dessert, because people are hungry and they will order it. And then at the end, they will take it to go. So if a restaurant's listening to me, I'd say, number one, get a masseuse. Number two, ask for the dessert order during dinner order. I'm telling you, dude, I'd outsell everybody and they couldn't figure out how I was doing it. Well, I was asking them when they were hungry. That's the only thing I did. And I sold more dessert than everybody. If the whole staff was doing that, holy moly, we would have sold the shit out of dessert. And I hear that's a very profitable thing to sell.
Yep.
So those are mine. Well, those are ours because we developed them here. You can take them because I'm not in the business. But what are yours? Top three for the people listening. Top three things they can do right now to go make a change.
I want to add one thing to your list. As much as we want to make the recommendation for dessert right away, this is just to add to Brad's list, not mine. And I'll give you my three. I want you to have a measured amount of time to get the first drink on the table. I want you to have a goal to get that drink on the table in the first 2 to 3 minutes that they get seated. Whatever works for you, just put a measurement around it, because what it does is it creates the opportunity for a second drink. If you don't get the timing right, you're leaving tens of thousands of dollars of profit. You measure that. That's one thing. Drinks on the table, tens of thousands of dollars to your bottom line. Add Brad's dessert. We're making money. That's it. On my side, the number one thing we want to do is get your attract strategy right. So my encouragement to you is to look into how you're filtering resumes. If you have a hiring problem, really look into how you're screening your resumes and how often you're reaching out to what you feel are qualified candidates. It's not sexy as a solution. I promise you, we just worked with a call center last week. Couldn't find any call center staff for a quick service restaurant. We hired 43 call center attendants last week. So within 7 days from starting the concept, 43 people on their team. We've got a few more to hire this week, fundamentally change their whole staffing for the upcoming holiday season, which starts pre-Halloween for them. The next thing that I do, if we're looking at hiring, is what's your people focused strategy? How are you investing in your people? The number one thing that your employees want, and this starts managers, supervisors, then staff, is the ability to grow and develop in their role. If you don't have a strategy to invest in them, they're going to quit you and go and work for somebody else. And then the third thing is you need clarity for yourself. I encourage any leader out there that's worked in the restaurant industry, owner or senior leader, you just went through the hardest 24 months of your career. In order to take care of others, you have to take care of yourself. That gives time to slow it down, get some help to get your strategy right, get some time to release, just be in an environment, but you have to take care of self by giving yourself permission to work on what matters most. In times of change, people need to be led. Breathe, take some time, invest in some development for yourself, and go lead your people because they need it right now.
Boom. Folks, you heard it, at Matt_Rolf_WS. I assume that's for West Shore. You can find him at westshorehospitality.com. You can also find him at mattrolf.com if you got some additional questions. If you're in the restaurant business, hospitality business, wanting to start it, got ideas for it, shoot him a message, a DM. And if you guys are looking for a training system, I don't know when it's going to be completely ready to go, but it's by the time you hear this, I'm sure it's ready to go. Go hit him up. He's got a system that can literally make a massive impact right away. Within a week, you said.
Yep.
It's all interactive virtual technology that's basically like having Matt and his team on your team 24/7 to train your team, test your team, notifications, reports. It's beyond just a video. It's a training system. And if you're going to be in the restaurant business, you're going to need a system, because I believe, turnover is just something that you have to deal with in that industry. So you better have a training system. And if you want an expert with the content, that is West Shore Hospitality Group. Matt, I appreciate you spending the time with us today.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks so much, my man.
Dude, and I will reach out to you offline because I want to talk to you a little bit more. And by the way, the book, You Can't Do It Alone. What does that teach? Why should someone go get your book?
It's going to teach you basically how to grow and scale your restaurant through the development of your people. So our online course and interactive training system with Lightspeed, it's echoed in the book. So it provides an opportunity to go a little bit deeper in a different learning format, a little bit more context and story. The online course will take you right into the details, but the book goes live on September 28th.
Where do they get it?
On Amazon. So you go to Amazon.com, the core platform, Scribe Bookstore. Secondary platform for us, but really excited to launch the book. You can also go to mattrolf.com. There's tons of free training assets, downloads, tools that you can take to your next meeting and change your strategies instantly. And we're excited. The course, like Brad said, we're ready to go. That course will be up by the time this podcast is live.
Good, man. Well, I appreciate it. And I'm sure people in the restaurant business listening appreciates it. And as always, folks, share this out. Maybe you're not in the restaurant game, but someone is. Share it out. Go rate my podcast so we can reach higher and higher up the charts, which means we reach more people, help more people. And until next time, keep it real.